What's up? Did Jesus die on the cross? Or was he rescued, hidden away, and smuggled off to India? Osho seems to think so. For those of you who don't know who Osho is, Osho was an Indian godman who took bits and pieces from Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and mashed them all up together to create a whole new belief system. Other things you should know: a lot of what he says doesn't actually make sense. He also talks really, really slow. I don't know if he's trying to hypnotize people with his... just preparing you. I actually find him very difficult to listen to because of those things. Dang. Had to get over that for the sake of this video. Hope you enjoy it. You'd better. So, did Jesus die on the cross? Let's find out.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ may be possible, but not the resurrection of Christianity.
What?
In fact, Jesus never died on the cross.
Again, what?
The Jewish cross takes at least 48 hours for a person to die.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know why he's referring to it as the Jewish cross. It was very much a Roman thing, and it was the Romans who performed Jesus' execution.
And there have been known cases where people have existed almost 6 days on the cross without dying.
Okay, so at this point, it's important for us to have some background information about what it actually meant to be crucified, the methods, the different shapes of the stakes. So here I'm going to give you 2 secular 1st century sources addressing Roman crucifixion. First, we have Josephus, the Jewish historian. This excerpt is taken from Wars of the Jews. He was writing about the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And he says this: "The Jews caught outside the walls of Jerusalem were first whipped and then tormented with all sorts of tortures before they died, and were then crucified before the wall of the city. The soldiers, out of the wrath and hatred they bore the Jews, nailed those they caught one after one way and another after another to the crosses by way of jest." Bit gross. He's basically saying that because the Romans had to kill so many of the Jews, they kind of got bored and so made up fun new ways and shapes that they could crucify people. Yeah. Second, we have the Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger. He says this: "I see before me crosses not all alike, but differently made by different peoples. Some hang a man head downwards, some force a stick up through his groin, some stretch out his arms on a forked gibbet." Oh boy. Okay, so Romans typically used 4 shapes. Forgive my Latin. Crux simplex, crux commissa, crux immissa, and crux decusata. So, the first one. Crux simples. This was a single upright stake or pole. In some cases, it may have simply just been a tree trunk. Victims were either nailed or tied to this cross. The second, crux commissa, which means connected cross, also referred to as St. Anthony's cross or the Tau cross. After the Greek letter tau it resembles. This one formed the shape of a capital T. The horizontal beam was right at the top, and then you have the vertical pole. The victim was nailed to the horizontal beam. Seriously, you don't need to help me move out. Anyway, arms outstretched. Feet were either nailed or tied to the bottom of the vertical pole. Crux immissa. This is the third one. Similar to commissa, but it better resembles a lowercase t in that it has that little section just above the horizontal beam. This is the shape traditionally observed by Christians as Jesus' cross. Like so. That horizontal bit was called a patibulum. When we read that Jesus carried his cross, it would have been that section of it that inserts onto the vertical pole. Victims were nailed to the horizontal beam by their hands, and their feet were nailed either together or separately to the bottom of the vertical beam. The last kind, decussata, resembles the shape of a capital X, so the victim would be outstretched both by their arms and their legs, nailed at the top, and either nailed or tied at the bottom. Gruesome.
Because Jesus was taken down from the cross only after 6 hours. There is no possibility of his dying on the cross. It was a conspiracy.
As I said before, the cross commissa is the most reasonably inferred shape of the cross that Jesus would have died on. It's actually not impossible that Jesus would have died after just 6 hours. The maximum amount of time a person would stay in that position on that particular cross is 24 hours, not 48. So 24 hours is the maximum. That means that any time before that is plausible. A person could have died an hour into it. So there's a couple points I want to make about his statements so far. It's important to understand that Romans weren't looking for a way to simply kill someone. Crucifixion was a spectacle. They were making an example out of these people. Jesus was no exception. In fact, since Jesus was walking around spouting so many blasphemous things against Jews and Romans, and his following was growing, people were listening to him, he was causing quite a ruckus. It's fair to assume that his experience would have been right up there with the worst of the worst criminals. Additionally, we know that the Romans used what was called a cat of nine tails, or a flagellum. Is it flagellum or flagellum? What's a silly word? Which is basically a leather whip with 9 strands, and at the end of each strand were bits of bone or metal. This is what Jesus was whipped by. His skin would have been ripped open. The underlying musculature on his back would have been exposed. So he's not even at the cross yet, and he is bleeding. He is wounded. So after all that, Jesus was forced to carry his cross to Golgotha, the place outside of Jerusalem. Once he was there, he was nailed to the cross. Another thing to bear in mind is, in order for him to breathe, he would have had to push down on the wounds in his feet, the weight of his whole body, lift himself up every single time. Remember, his musculature was exposed, and so every time he had to lift himself up, his back was being rubbed against the wood, his open flesh back. Point being, it was painful to continue to live. The last point I want to make on this is, considering he knew he was going to die, and die in this way, there would really be no point for him, no reason for him to try to prolong his life by way of breathing for longer than what was necessary. And it seems that 6 hours was what was necessary. So he hung there from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. That's 6 hours. Interestingly, 6 is the number of man, it's the number of flesh. Jesus died on the cross for the sins of man. From noon to 3, the world went dark. That's 3 hours. 3 is the number of perfect completion. I don't know what you want to do with that information, I'm just putting it out there.
We've been a rich sympathizer of Jesus and Pontius Pilate to crucify Jesus as late as possible on Friday, because on Saturday Jews stop everything. Their Sabbath does not allow any act. So by the evening of Friday, everything stops. The arrangement was that Jesus will be crucified late afternoon. So before sunset he is brought down. He may be unconscious because so much blood has flown out of the body, but he was not dead. should be kept in a cave, and before Sabbath ends and Jews hang him again, his body should be stolen by his followers.
Who directed this military operation, and for what? Who gained? For real, none of what he says is backed up by any kind of evidence. He doesn't even try and present any evidence that supports the things he's saying.
The tomb was found empty. Jesus was removed from Judea as quickly as possible, and as he was again healthy and healed, moved to India, and he lived a long life, 112 years.
Okay, let's summarize. So, Jesus spent his life ministering to the Jews and the Gentiles, spreading the gospel, performing miracles, healings, deliverances, claiming to be the great I am. He was sold out by Judas, skin was whipped off, he was nailed to a cross, didn't die though. He was then rescued by the one who put him on the cross and some other mysterious figure, this sympathizer of Jesus, to then chill out in a cave until he was all better and could escape to live in Kashmir, India for no apparent reason, and for, 112 years? Yeah, why not? Meanwhile, the men and women who dedicated their lives to him, who believed the things that he said, spent the rest of their lives being hunted and tortured and imprisoned, and some of them were killed just like him, or like he was supposed to be. Yep. Jesus didn't travel to India. He didn't travel to India after his death, nor did he travel to India in that supposedly unaccounted period between the ages of 12 and 30. More on that in another video if you like. So in summary, there is no good evidence that any of what Osho has said is true. There's no good evidence historically or medically that Jesus would have survived his crucifixion. And there's no reason, morally or logically, why he would have been rescued from the cross, whether you argue that from an Islamic point of view or from Osho's point of view. Jesus was on the cross and he died on the cross. That's what the evidence supports, and that's what is widely accepted because the evidence supports it. It's only reasonable. Besides, the Romans clearly knew how to kill a man, and as a method of investigation, they checked to see if Jesus was in fact dead by running a spear through his side, and we read that blood and water gushed out. Probably because the spear pierced the pericardial sac surrounding the heart. And finally, the Journal of the American Medical Association published an article entitled On the Physical Death of Jesus Christ in 1986, where they detail that Jesus would certainly have died by the crucifixion alone. So this assertion that Jesus didn't die flies in the face of well-attested historical and medical fact from both Christian and non-Christian sources. Okay, see you later.